The message arrived on a quiet morning, echoing through the vast radio telescope array in Nevada. Dr. Jack Miller almost spilled his coffee as the computer flagged a non-random pattern from deep space. After 20 years of listening to the stars, someone had finally answered. "Ellen, you need to see this," he called to his colleague, Dr. Ellen White, who rushed over from her workstation. The signal was unmistakable, structured data packets following mathematical principles that could only be artificial. For 3 days, the team worked tirelessly to decode the message, and when they finally did, they wished it had been a simple greeting. "They're dying," Ellen said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This species, the Ravi, their star system, is under attack." The message described a peaceful civilization facing extinction at the hands of something called the Harvesters, entities that move between stars consuming resources and leaving dead worlds in their wake. The Ravi had sent their cry for help in all directions, hoping any advanced civilization might respond. Within hours, the president assembled an emergency council. Military leaders, scientists, and government officials debated the implications of an alien species reaching out for aid. "We've only just developed our first interstellar ship," General Paul Davis reminded everyone. "The Phoenix isn't even fully tested yet." "But the Ravi included navigation data for their wormhole network," Dr. Miller countered. "We could reach them in weeks instead of centuries." The debate lasted for days. Some argued Earth should not reveal itself to unknown cosmic threats. Others felt a moral obligation to help. In the end, humanity's curiosity and compassion won out. "We'll send the Phoenix," the president announced, "with our best crew and whatever help we can offer." What none of them could explain to the Ravi was what exactly they were getting. Humans had evolved on a planet considered extraordinarily harsh by cosmic standards: high gravity, extreme temperature variations, deadly radiation levels, and countless predators. Earth was what astrobiologists would classify as a death world, and its inhabitants had developed accordingly. Captain Susan Rivera received her orders with a mixture of pride and apprehension. At 38, she had never expected to command humanity's first interstellar mission, let alone a rescue operation. "We're selecting crew now," her XO, Ben Hayes, reported. "Engineers, medical personnel, scientists, and a security team. Make sure they understand what we're walking into," Susan replied. "We're responding to a distress call from beings who might view us as monsters." The Phoenix was quickly modified for its new mission. Medical supplies and humanitarian aid filled cargo bays alongside weapons and defensive systems. No one knew exactly what the Harvesters were, but Earth was sending its children prepared for anything. 2 weeks later, the Phoenix approached the first wormhole junction, its crew of 50 representing the best humanity had to offer. They stood on the observation deck, watching the swirling blue-green portal that would take them beyond known space. The Ravi asked for help. Captain Rivera told her assembled crew, "They're getting Deathworlders instead. Let's hope that's exactly what they need." As the Phoenix entered the wormhole, humanity took its first real step into the galactic community, not as explorers or conquerors, but as rescuers answering a desperate call from the stars. The Phoenix emerged from the final wormhole jump with a shudder. After 9 days of travel through the strange network of space-time tunnels, they had arrived in the Ravi home system. The crew rushed to their stations as Captain Susan Rivera ordered a full sensor sweep. "Multiple planets showing signs of attack," reported Science Officer Kyle Adams. "The third planet appears to be their homeworld. I'm detecting cities, orbital structures, and movement. They're still fighting." On the main view screen, a beautiful blue-green world appeared, not unlike Earth but with 2 small moons. What shocked the crew was the massive dark shapes surrounding the planet, angular vessels that resembled nothing so much as floating mountains. "Those must be the Harvester ships," Ben Hayes said quietly. "They're enormous." Captain Rivera straightened her uniform. "Open a channel to the planet. Let's announce ourselves." For several tense minutes, there was no response. Then suddenly, the view screen flickered and revealed a strange sight. The being looking back at them had 4 delicate arms, iridescent skin that seemed almost translucent, and large compound eyes that dominated its small face. Unknown vessel, the alien spoke in a musical voice, translated by the computer. I am High Counselor Ziv of the Ravi Collective. Have you received our distress signal? Susan stepped forward. This is Captain Susan Rivera of the Earth vessel Phoenix. We intercepted your message and have come to offer assistance. The alien's eyes widened visibly. You are organic beings, not automated response systems. We are human beings from Earth, Susan confirmed. We've brought supplies, medical aid, and defense capabilities. The Ravi seemed stunned into silence, its delicate limbs trembling slightly. We must meet immediately. Your arrival is unexpected. Within hours, a small landing party prepared to shuttle down to the planet. Susan selected a team including herself, Medical Officer Lisa Chen, Security Chief Marcus Johnson, and Science Officer Adams. They wore lightweight environmental suits as a precaution. The Ravi shuttle bay was a marvel of crystalline architecture, with soaring ceilings and delicate support structures that seemed too fragile to stand. As the humans stepped out, a group of Ravi officials waited, standing at a noticeable distance. Welcome to Rava Prime, High Counselor Ziv greeted them, still maintaining space between them. We are grateful for your response, though we must admit our surprise. Up close, the differences between humans and Ravi became stark. The aliens stood barely 4 feet tall, with bodies so slender they seemed almost two-dimensional from certain angles. Their movements were graceful but careful, as if the very air might damage them. We're surprised too, Susan replied honestly. We've never encountered other intelligent life before. Yet you came, Ziv said with what might have been wonder. You traveled through unknown space to help strangers. The humans were led to a conference chamber where other Ravi waited. A holographic display showed the harvester ships and their devastating attacks on Ravi colonies. They arrived 6 months ago, explained a military advisor named Trell. They consume everything: metals, organics, energy. We have lost 3 colony worlds already. When Marcus Johnson demonstrated human weapons capabilities on a simulator, the Ravi stepped back in alarm at the explosive force. Your species, Ziv said carefully, appears to have evolved in conditions very different from ours. Lisa Chen nodded. Earth is what you might call a high-gravity, high-radiation environment with extreme temperature variations. It shaped our development. The Ravi exchanged glances that needed no translation. They had sent a desperate plea across the stars, hoping for advanced technology or peaceful negotiators. Instead, they got Deathworlders, beings with dense muscle mass, reinforced skeletons, and aggressive survival instincts that made them living weapons compared to the fragile Ravi. The harvesters will attack our main agricultural center tomorrow, Ziv said finally. Would your people help us defend it? Susan stood tall, her very posture radiating a confidence alien to the Ravi. That's why we came. Dawn broke over the vast agricultural domes of Ravi Colony 7. The massive glass structures stretched for miles, housing the food production that kept the Ravi homeworld fed. Captain Susan Rivera stood at the edge of the main settlement, watching the horizon through binoculars. They're coming, she said to Marcus Johnson beside her, just like the Ravi intelligence said they would. In the distance, dark shapes moved across the purple-tinted landscape. Hundreds of them, each the size of a small tank. The harvesters had sent ground forces ahead of their main ships. All teams in position, Susan asked through her comm unit. Team Alpha ready at the north entrance, replied Ben Hayes. Team Beta covering the east, Engineer Dan Foster confirmed. Medical station established and waiting, reported Lisa Chen from inside the main dome. The 20 human soldiers from the Phoenix had been divided into strategic positions around the colony. The Ravi defenders, though brave, lacked both the physical strength and combat experience to face the harvesters directly. Their slender bodies and delicate exoskeletons weren't built for warfare. Remember, Susan told her teams, our primary goal is to protect the civilians. Secondary goal is to capture a harvester specimen if possible. We need to understand what we're fighting. The first wave of harvester units reached the outer sensor perimeter. Up close, they resembled massive insects with metallic exoskeletons and multiple limbs ending in cutting tools. They moved with single-minded purpose toward the agricultural domes. Open fire when they crossed the red line, Susan ordered. When the harvesters reached the marked boundary, human weapons roared to life. The sound alone made the Ravi observers flinch, but the effect on the harvesters was immediate. The front row of creatures stumbled and fell under the barrage of bullets and energy weapons. But the harvesters kept coming, climbing over their fallen, advancing relentlessly toward the domes. They're not retreating, Marcus noted with grim fascination. No self-preservation instinct. Fall back to position 2, Susan ordered as the creatures got too close. Her team retreated to a reinforced barrier, where Ravi engineers had installed defense turrets based on human designs. The harvesters reached the barrier and began cutting through with terrifying efficiency. One broke through and lunged at a human soldier named Kelly Wilson. She met it with surprising speed, driving a combat knife into what appeared to be a neural cluster. The creature collapsed. "They can be killed," she called out. "Aim for the central body mass." For 3 hours, the battle raged around the perimeter. The humans fought with a ferocity that shocked their Ravi allies, engaging in close combat when necessary, using improvised weapons when ammunition ran low. What the Ravi saw as reckless bravery was simply human survival instinct in action. Inside the medical station, Lisa Chen treated both human and Ravi casualties. The differences became painfully clear. Injuries that merely inconvenienced humans were life-threatening to the Ravi. "Your cellular regeneration rate is remarkable," a Ravi medical officer named Seth commented, as Lisa bandaged her own arm wound. "Just standard human healing," Lisa replied, already returning to work. By midday, the harvester assault began to falter. Without tactical adaptation or apparent concern for losses, their numerical advantage had diminished against the strategic human defense. "They're retreating," Ben reported from his position, heading back toward their main vessel. Susan surveyed the battlefield from a high point in the colony. Dead harvesters littered the ground, but all the agricultural domes remained intact. 3 humans had sustained serious injuries, but none had died. Dozens of Ravi had been saved. "We've won the first round," she told High Counselor Ziv, who had remained in the command center throughout the battle. "But they'll be back with different tactics." Ziv studied Susan with new understanding. "When we sent our message to the stars, we hoped for saviors with advanced technology. Instead, we received warriors from a world that forged them through hardship." Susan smiled grimly. "Sometimes that's exactly what you need." The Ravi High Command gathered in their crystalline war room, holographic displays showing the positions of harvester ships throughout their system. 3 days had passed since the successful defense of Colony 7, and the harvesters had gone quiet. "They're regrouping," Marcus Johnson said, pointing to movement near the outer planets. "And if I had to guess, they're adapting to our presence." High Counselor Ziv nodded solemnly. "The harvesters learn. Each attack becomes more efficient than the last. This is how we lost our outer colonies." Captain Susan Rivera studied the displays with narrowed eyes. The Phoenix crew had been integrated into Ravi defense planning, bringing a perspective the peaceful aliens lacked. Humans understood predators. They understood war. "We can't just keep reacting," Susan said finally. "We need to take the fight to them." The suggestion sent a visible ripple of alarm through the Ravi officials. Their entire strategy had been defensive, focused on minimizing losses rather than engaging directly. "Attack the harvesters," Admiral Len, the Ravi military leader, asked in disbelief. "Their mothership is larger than our largest city. We lack the firepower." Engineer Dan Foster, who had been quietly working with Ravi technicians, stepped forward. "Maybe not. We've been examining the harvester drone we captured. Their technology isn't actually more advanced than yours, just different. They rely on overwhelming numbers, not superior weapons. He activated a hologram showing the internal structure of a harvester unit. They're part biological, part machine, and they have a networked intelligence. Cut off the head, the body falls. Susan leaned forward. You're suggesting we target their command ship? Exactly, Dan nodded. The Phoenix wasn't built as a warship, but with Ravi modifications, we might create something the harvesters haven't encountered before. For the next 2 days, humans and Ravi worked together in the orbital shipyards. The Phoenix received crystalline armor plating, while its human weapon systems were integrated with Ravi energy technology. The result was neither purely human nor Ravi design, but something new. The most striking addition was a modified shuttle, reinforced and armed, designed for a small strike team to board the Harvester mothership. This is beyond dangerous, Ben Hayes told Susan as they inspected the modified shuttle. We don't know what's inside that thing. That's why I'm leading the boarding party myself, Susan replied. I won't ask anyone to take risks I won't share. The night before the mission, humans and Ravi gathered for a meal together. The atmosphere was solemn but determined. Lisa Chen had created special nutrient preparations that both species could enjoy, bridging their biological differences through shared ritual. Your people continue to surprise us, Ziv said to Susan. When we first saw you, so dense and heavy-boned, with your efficient respiratory systems and redundant organs, we feared we had invited monsters into our home. Susan smiled slightly. On Earth, we have a saying. Sometimes you need a monster to fight a monster. You are not monsters, Ziv replied softly. You are survivors, shaped by a world that tested you. We evolved in gentle conditions that never prepared us for this fight. The next morning, the Phoenix departed the Ravi shipyard, its modified hull gleaming with new armor. 6 Ravi ships accompanied it, their slender designs contrasting with the Phoenix's robust form. As they approached the Harvester fleet near the system's 4th planet, Susan addressed both her crew and their Ravi allies. Today we show the Harvesters that they chose the wrong system to attack. They expected easy prey. Instead, they found the Ravi. And they found Earth's children. The Phoenix accelerated toward the massive Harvester mothership, weapons charge, carrying Deathworlders into battle against the stars. The Phoenix raced toward the Harvester mothership, weaving between enemy fighters. The massive vessel loomed ahead, a dark mountain floating in space, its surface covered with strange protrusions and docking bays. This is our approach vector, Susan announced as she piloted the modified shuttle with 5 crew members aboard. Phoenix will provide covering fire while we dock on the underside access point. Behind her sat Marcus Johnson, Lisa Chen, engineer Dan Foster, and communications officer Ryan Park. Each wore sealed environmental suits modified with Ravi technology, carrying weapons and specialized equipment. The Ravi fleet is engaging the outer defenses, Ryan reported, monitoring communications. They're drawing most of the attention away from us. Through the viewport, they watched Ravi ships dancing between harvester vessels, their graceful movements belying the deadly energy beams they fired. The distraction was working. 30 seconds to contact, Susan warned as she guided the shuttle toward a maintenance port identified by Ravi scanners. Everyone remember, we don't know what atmosphere or gravity to expect inside. Stay alert. The shuttle locked onto the harvester ship with a metallic clang. Dan activated the cutting tools, slicing through the outer hull. When the section fell away, they faced a dark, organic-looking tunnel. Air readings show oxygen present, but with high methane content, Lisa reported from her scanner. Gravity seems comparable to Earth standard, maybe slightly higher. Susan nodded. Helmets stay on. Let's move. They entered the harvester ship in single file, lights from their suits illuminating the strange environment. The interior resembled a combination of mechanical structure and living tissue, with cables and tubes running alongside what looked disturbingly like veins and arteries. It's like we're inside a living organism, Lisa whispered, taking samples with a specialized tool. These vessels are carrying nutrient solutions. Focus on the mission, Susan reminded them. We need to reach the central control node and plant the disruptors. They moved deeper into the ship, following the map created from Ravi sensor data. Occasionally, they encountered harvester drones, but the creatures seemed less aggressive here, moving with purpose toward unknown destinations. They don't recognize us as a threat in their home territory, Marcus suggested after they hid from a passing group. They're not expecting invaders. The team reached a vast chamber filled with glowing pods. Inside each floated what appeared to be partially formed harvester units. It's a breeding chamber, Lisa said, scanning the nearest pod. They're growing new units from harvested biomatter. That explains why they attack agricultural worlds, Ryan added grimly. It's not just resources, it's raw materials for new soldiers. Susan checked her tactical display. We're close to the central node. 2 more sections ahead. As they approached their target, the ship suddenly shuddered. Through their comms came Ben's urgent voice from the Phoenix. Captain, the harvesters have detected your presence. They're redirecting internal security. You've got multiple hostiles heading your way. The warning came just as doors around the chamber slid open, revealing dozens of harvester drones moving toward them with single-minded purpose. Defensive positions, Susan ordered, taking cover behind a structural column. The team formed a tight circle, backs together, as the harvesters closed in. The battle that followed highlighted the difference between humans and their enemies. Where the harvesters moved with mechanical precision, the humans adapted, used cover, and fought with creative intensity. Marcus threw explosive charges to collapse a walkway, cutting off one group of attackers. Dan repurposed his cutting tool as an improvised flamethrower against the organic components of nearby drones. We can't stay here, Susan called over the noise of battle. Ryan, Lisa, break for the central node. We'll cover you. Lisa and Ryan sprinted toward the next chamber while Susan, Marcus, and Dan laid down covering fire. The two reached the entrance to the control center, a massive door blocking their path. Working on it, Ryan said, connecting his decoder to the access panel. As the door slowly opened, Susan looked back at the remaining harvesters still advancing despite heavy losses. In that moment, she understood their fundamental difference. The harvesters functioned as mindless extensions of their collective, while humans fought with the fierce determination of individual survivors. The doors open, Ryan called. We're in. The central control chamber of the Harvester mothership was unlike anything the human team had imagined. The vast spherical room pulsed with bioluminescent light, its walls covered with what appeared to be both technology and living tissue. At the center floated a massive brain-like structure connected to countless tubes and cables. That's their central processor, Dan whispered, checking his scanner. It's partly organic, partly quantum computing. Susan led the team forward cautiously. The chamber seemed empty of harvester drones, but strange eye-like sensors followed their movement. The disruptors need to be placed at 3 equidistant points, Lisa reminded them, removing the devices from her pack. Each was the size of a small book, a joint creation of human engineering and Ravi crystal technology. I'll take the far side, Susan decided. Marcus, you take the right quadrant. Lisa, the left. Dan and Ryan, stay here and guard our exit. As they separated, a low humming filled the chamber. The brain-like structure pulsed more rapidly, and suddenly, a voice echoed around them. Not spoken, but somehow projected directly into their minds. Intruders, different, not Ravi. The team froze, looking at each other in shock. It's communicating, Ryan said, adjusting his translator. The Ravi didn't mention it could do that. The Ravi never got this close, Susan replied, then addressed the entity. We are humans, from Earth. Why are you attacking the Ravi worlds? The pulsing increased. Consumption, necessary. Growth, mandatory. All resources must be harvested. It doesn't see the Ravi as living beings, Lisa realized, just as resources to be used. The voice continued. You, different, dense, strong, valuable resource. Marcus positioned his disruptor against the wall, while the entity was focused on Susan. It sees us as better quality food, he muttered. Susan kept the entity's attention. The Ravi and their worlds are not yours to take. We won't allow you to continue. Resistance, irrelevant. All will be consumed. Function, necessary. As Marcus and Lisa silently placed their devices, Susan reached for her own disruptor. She had almost reached her designated position when the floor beneath her suddenly shifted, tentacle-like appendages grabbing at her legs. It knows, she shouted, struggling against the grip. Activate the disruptors. Marcus slammed his hand on his device, which lit up with blue energy. Lisa did the same across the chamber. The brain structure began to writhe, its color changing from blue to angry red. Error. System corruption. Function compromised. The voice became distorted, rising and falling in pitch. Susan fought against the tentacles with strength that would have been impossible for a Ravi, her dense muscles and reinforced bones giving her the advantage. She broke free, lunged forward, and placed the final disruptor. Now, she ordered. Dan activated the remote trigger. All three devices pulsed in unison, sending waves of disrupting energy through the biological components of the harvester system. The brain structure convulsed violently. Get back to the shuttle, Susan commanded as parts of the ceiling began to collapse. The team raced through corridors, now filled with disoriented harvester drones, stumbling aimlessly or shutting down completely. The ship's internal systems flashed and failed around them. Phoenix, we need extraction, Susan called through her comm. Target neutralized, but this place is coming apart. They reached their entry point to find the shuttle still docked, but damaged by falling debris. Dan jumped in first, quickly assessing the systems. Main engines damaged, but thrusters are working. If we time it right, we can push away and let the Phoenix pick us up. As the others boarded, Susan looked back at the dying harvester ship. The massive vessel was already showing signs of system failure, with sections going dark and smaller craft detaching in random patterns. The Ravi ships are reporting the same all across the harvester fleet, Ryan announced, monitoring communications. Without central coordination, the entire collective is failing. Susan strapped herself into the pilot's seat. Then let's not waste their sacrifice. Detaching now. The shuttle broke free just as a massive explosion ripped through the section behind them. As they tumbled away from the disintegrating mothership, the Phoenix appeared above them. Tractor beam activated. This is Hayes, came Ben's voice. We've got you, Captain. Welcome back. From the shuttle viewport, the team watched as the harvester fleet, once so menacing, drifted powerless. The Ravi had won their world back. Susan smiled tiredly at her team. Not bad for some Deathworlders, huh? 1 month after the destruction of the harvester mothership, the Phoenix crew stood in the grand hall of Ravi Prime. Sunlight streamed through crystalline walls, casting rainbow patterns across the gathered crowd of humans and Ravi. The atmosphere was solemn but hopeful. High Counselor Ziv stepped to the center platform, his delicate form adorned with ceremonial garments that shimmered with each movement. Today we honor those who came when we called, he began, his musical voice carrying through the hall. 6 cycles ago, we sent our desperate plea into the void, hoping for salvation. What answered was beyond our imagination. Captain Susan Rivera stood with her crew, all wearing their dress uniforms. The past weeks had been filled with recovery efforts, helping the Ravi rebuild damaged colonies and clearing the remaining harvester technology from their system. The humans of Earth, Ziv continued, came to us as strangers, born of a world that would kill most Ravi within minutes. Their dense bodies, their strength, their natural resilience. At first, we feared these qualities. Now we recognize them as the very traits that saved our civilization. Susan stepped forward when beckoned, accepting a crystal sphere that contained a perfect miniature model of both Earth and the Ravi homeworld, orbiting a shared star. "This represents our new bond," Ziv explained. "No longer separate worlds, but allies across the stars." Susan addressed the gathered Ravi, her voice steady. "We came because it was right to come. Because no matter how different we appear, we share something fundamental. The desire to exist, to grow, to protect our homes and families." She looked around at the delicate beauty of the Ravi architecture, so different from the sturdy, practical designs of Earth. "Our worlds shaped us differently, but perhaps that's the greatest strength of this galaxy. Diversity creates resilience." After the ceremony, the Phoenix crew prepared for their journey home. The ship had been repaired and enhanced with Ravi technology, making the return trip faster and safer. On the observation deck, Susan found High Counselor Ziv watching the loading operations. "Your people move with such purpose," he noted. "Always in motion, always working." Susan smiled. "It's our nature. Earth doesn't allow for much idle time." "We have begun studying your world through the data you shared," Ziv said. "Such conditions seem impossible to support life, yet they created beings of remarkable adaptability. Our scientists are already developing new technologies based on your biological systems. And we've learned from you as well," Susan replied. "Your sustainable energy systems, your harmonious social structures. These are lessons Earth needs." Below them, a group of young Ravi were listening intently as Engineer Dan demonstrated basic self-defense moves. Since the Harvester attack, many Ravi had expressed interest in learning human survival skills. "They call you Deathworlders now," Ziv said thoughtfully, "but the term has changed meaning. Before, it was fearful. Now, it is spoken with respect." The next morning, the Phoenix crew said their final goodbyes. A permanent human embassy would remain on Ravi Prime, with 5 volunteers staying behind as representatives. In return, 3 brave Ravi scientists would journey to Earth, protected by specially designed environmental suits. As the Phoenix lifted off, Susan took one last look at the beautiful blue-green world below. The Ravi fleet formed an honor guard around them, escorting them to the first wormhole junction. Course set for Earth, Ben Hayes reported from navigation. Estimated arrival in 2 weeks. Susan nodded, settling into her captain's chair. "When we left home, we were just explorers responding to a call. We return as something more. Galactic heroes," Marcus suggested with a grin. "Representatives," Susan corrected. "Earth is no longer alone in the universe. And neither are the Ravi." As the Phoenix entered the wormhole in a flash of light, Susan thought about the message they would bring home. The galaxy was vast and sometimes dangerous, but it was also full of wonders and new friends. And sometimes, being from a death world was exactly what the universe needed. The Ravi had begged for aid and received Deathworlders instead. It had made all the difference.